I'm Ryan Milliken from Hardway Performance, and you're listening to the Diesel Podcast.
I'm Dimitri Miller with No Zone Diesel.
This is Anthony Rings from XDP.
This is Jaron Holder from Holderdown Performance.
Kory Willis from PPEI.
I'm Drew with D&J Precision Machine.
I'm Pinky.
And you're listening to the Diesel Podcast.
Diesel Podcast.
You're listening to the Diesel Podcast.
The Diesel Podcast. The one and only Diesel Podcast.
What is going on, Diesel Nation? This is a really cool episode we've got today with Kory Willis from PPEI, and he's helping us celebrate this milestone we've hit. And it's all because of you guys and the support that you give us with every episode and your emails and phone calls and support on social media. But we've hit 600,000 listeners out there, which is crazy. When we started this, we didn't even dream it would grow this big. So we want to thank all of you guys. And make sure when you go on iTunes to leave us a review and let us know who you want to hear from, topics you want to hear about. We check them daily, and we use those to schedule guests, and we ask them questions based on the feedback you guys leave us. Now, before we get to the podcast with Kory, we want to thank two of our sponsors for helping make these episodes possible. The first is Diesel Doctor of Tennessee. If you're looking for a Powerstroke, Cummins, or Duramax engine for your truck, whether it's something used for work or you need a full-on race build, these guys got it. And there's no stone left unturned when they go through a motor. From balancing, blueprinting, tons of different things these guys do. You need to check them out. Whether you're looking for an engine for your truck or you own a shop and you need engines for your customers, go to diesel911.com. You can browse pricing. We got contact information to call the guys over there. And if you want to ship your truck in, they can do that. Or they can ship these engines anywhere in the United States. So make sure and check them out. Also, PPEI. PPEI has been with us from the start. And we've run their tuning on our own trucks. We've got a lot of feedback from customers out there. Whether you've got a Powerstroke, Cummins, or Duramax, the F-150 with the 3-liter Powerstroke, or the Nissan Titan with the Cummins, these guys have it dialed in. And on this episode, we're going to go into all the details of that, from new releases, updates, tons of different things. We're going to put a link in the description. If you're looking for custom tuning, you want to get a little bit more out of your truck, or you're going fast at a racetrack, sled pulling, whatever it might be, just click that link. It'll take you right there, and you can get some custom tunes for your truck. All right, let's get to this talk with Kory Willis and learn about some updates and some really huge things with tuning for diesel engines. Kory Willis, it is fantastic to have you back on the Diesel Podcast, man. You've been really busy tearing up the tuning world with tons of cool things, and we wanted to talk with you about them today.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's been absolutely insane. I'm glad to be able to take a moment out and chat with you guys.
Yeah, man. It's before we jump into it, we're approaching a milestone on the podcast, which is like 600,000 listeners. And
oh my god,
I remember in the beginning, I had 2.5 years ago, I think I had 5 listeners, and 3 of them I was related to. And I'm like, hey, Kory, you want to jump on a podcast to talk about tuning? And you were down. You were totally into it. So we appreciate you and PPEI being there from the beginning to bring us information, help us bring information to diesel owners out there about tuning their trucks.
Oh, for sure, man. That's what we do. We're just as passionate about it now as we were on day one. So to be able to bring anything to light's fun.
It is. And, for our listeners out there, if they're not following you on social media, they need to, because you have a lot of inspirational stuff. I remember thinking back about even doing a podcast. I was like, well, I don't know, I don't even know how to do it. What should I do? And a lot of the things you post are just give it a shot, be persistent.
Yeah, do it.
Be persistent.
I always like to think it's okay, is it going to kill you or is it not going to kill you? Okay, you can do it. Because money's replaceable, you make a failure, move on. We all figure out how to make it. But yeah, I do, man. I try to post positive stuff on there. A matter of fact, I took when my close friend, one of my best friends, had passed from cancer, it really slowed things down for me. And so since then, I'd actually removed Facebook from my phone. I keep Messenger on there and I check it when I can, but I keep Instagram and Snapchat a little bit around because there's not so many groups and things. And although they're really good for marketing, what I was having an issue with was they were taking up a lot of my time and making me lose focus on what I got started in this industry for in the first place, which was because I enjoy tuning, and a lot of times people would say, well, I don't have time for this or I don't have time for that. And then if they actually write down how many hours they use throughout the day and they notice that, hey, I could have had an extra 3 hours worth of brain power, but instead I had, an hour and a half to 3 hours invested into this false Facebook that caused an emotion, that distracted me from what I do for a living. So long story short, whenever I quit focusing so much on that and I started focusing more so on just what we do for a living, it just opened up a whole new world. We don't realize how much, although social media is a blessing, it's a gift. I think it's the biggest thing that got PPEI where it's at. It can also be a huge distraction to productivity. And since I've really not separated from social media, but I've basically just allowed myself to only focus on positive things and forward movement and not so much trying to fix, any issues all day, it's PPEI's productivity is just going through the roof. It's been insane with that small changes made.
Well, that leads into one of the first questions I wanted to ask you is, and this comes up on when we post on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or just emails, is people say, hey, we know that you guys work with PPEI. What makes their tuning different? What makes them different as a company? Why should I, buy their product and trust them to tune my truck? And I wanted to just put that out there bluntly and just ask you.
Yeah.
If you had to talk to someone, and I know you have, and have done for years, but for our listeners, why PPEI? Why should I buy PPEI tuning?
Man, I'll give a really, really good rundown on that, and obviously it's strictly my opinion, and I'm gonna be a little bit biased towards PPEI, but I think doing this for years, being one of the OG EFI Live beta testers, one of the OG diesel tuners, I think we have a decently weighing opinion, and my opinion is whenever I see a lot of people, they're like, well, if you don't get it tuned in person, or I want to use a local tuner, and because PPEI is so big, you're going to get a generic tune and this and that, and I've seen it all and I read it all, but it brings me back to at one point in time I was that not a big name person, I was that local tuner when I started on EFI Live's forum. Whenever I started becoming a beta tester, I don't even know if my business was really up and running at the time. I just enjoyed tuning. I really loved it. I loved testing the features. I would even enjoy finding a misspelling in EFI Live and reporting it to them. I just love doing that kind of stuff. So, the difference is between now and then, I would have to say, and a reason that I would say PPEI is a good choice is because back then, whenever I was, just the local tuner and I was primarily focusing on truck to truck, I was also trying to maintain a business. And with that, I wasn't able to put 100% focus into my tuning. Sure, I put 100% into that truck when I was working that truck, but whenever you're trying to answer phone calls and you're trying to ship things out and you're trying to go through multiple emails, and you're basically a one-man show, and at the same time be super personable with your customers because you're trying to develop a name. You really want to be the nice guy, and we still do to this day. But the biggest difference is that now we've grown as such a company and have really experts here that I don't have to focus on the shipping. I don't have to focus on the shipping price. I don't have to focus on the writing up product releases. Basically, all I have to do all day long is tune, R&D, and find, improvements in tuning. So, now as a company that's sending out, 150 tune files a day, I can actually dial in trucks and focus better now than I could whenever I was only doing, 10 trucks a week and trying to run a normal job and trying to get shipping and, all these little mishaps you have as being self-employed. We're dialed in. We don't have any of those issues anymore. So when you call in and there's a shipping problem, you get a shipping expert. When you call in and there's a tech problem, I think PPEI's got the absolute best techs in the industry. And I say that because we work one-on-one with a lot of these hardware companies that come to us asking us, hey, how can we improve? How can we do that? So if we're not a leader, we're hands down one of the leaders, judging by these respectable hardware companies and software companies calling us and asking us for our feedback and to be involved in their development processes. So as far as a tech standpoint, I think it's just about as good as it gets. And then, my passion which I'll actually send to you of tuning. I'll show a picture. I try to show it on Snapchat and Instagram when I can, but my office looks like an absolute mad scientist lab. There's pins and bench harnesses. There's tons of equipment in here. And another reason to pick, in my opinion, PPEI is I couldn't afford back then to have all these tools. I couldn't develop tuning as good as I would have wanted to because, for one, without the tooling, you lack the knowledge. And then without doing tons of trucks, you also lack the experience. And you never quit learning in this industry. So to me, a premier reason to select whatever tuning from PPEI is because we've got so many. I think we've tuned now over 175,000 vehicles.
Wow.
So we have tons of experience. Like if there's a problem, we've probably been there, seen it, and know how to fix it pretty quickly. Where no doubt, the local tuner may be better than me. I'm just using an example. Where it might take him 15 flashes to get it right, we've probably seen the problem and we can make a revision in 1 or 2 hits and have the truck dialed in just because we've done it so many times. It doesn't make us absent to error or, absent to not being able to get something right or getting it right. But, the chances are we've been there and we've done it. So it's a really big reason to pick PPEI. You're truly getting a professional tuning company. That's what we specialize in. We do it all day, every day.
That it struck a chord with me about, like starting out and like a one-man show, and not even say specifically with tuning, this could be in anything in diesel, is there's a lot of guys out there where they're really good at what they do. It's like, they start a business, could be something transmission, turbo related, anything. And when you buy the product, you get used to, hey, I can call this guy and he's going to get back to me. And then they start to grow. Right. And it's like, okay, I call and then I get a call back at the end of the day. Then they get bigger and then it's a few days later. And it can end up being really frustrating as a consumer, especially for new customers where they're not used to it. So being able...
And we went through it.
Mm-hmm.
We went through it.
Yeah, so being able to call in and I don't have to ask for Kory Willis. Like whoever answers the phone can help me right away. It saves me time.
It really does. And I think, I truthfully think that the guys, if anyone would be to come to our facility here, we don't work on trucks here. We don't do any of that here. We are strictly tuning. Now you come out and you'll see a bunch of side-by-sides. We work on our personal side-by-sides here. And then if the occasional R&D of a part on a truck, but for the most part, the tech guys know more about tech than I do, and I would challenge about anybody in the industry because these guys deal with more volume than I would be willing to say anybody. So if there's an issue, they really know how to fix it. So somebody saying, well, I can call and talk to my tuner about such and such issue and he gets right on it. Yeah, you can. And truthfully, you'll be able to for a while. But if that tuner is successful and in their ventures, you're not going to be able to because there's no way he can physically write your tuning, have, the 30-minute personal conversations on the phone with you, and then drop the other 50 revisions he's doing to handle yours right then and there. That's why I think a lot of times in this industry, we see so many industries or companies that I like to just call come and goes. They're here today. They are the superhero. They're personable. They're so much cooler than the next guy because you got to talk to them. And it works. Truthfully, it really is nice. But if that guy is successful, he's going to have to structure his company so he can continue to grow and service customers. And at some point in time, you can't answer every phone call. And I've heard some of them say, "Well, I just I want to stay small. I don't really want to go much bigger." I don't see anybody being a true self-employed entrepreneur saying, "I just want to stay small forever." I don't understand that mindset, and I would be questionable about someone that thinks that way actually tuning my vehicle. So calling into a company and not getting the owner directly, as long as you're getting good support, then I think that's the ticket because you can allow that person to do what they do best and develop products for you while, the techs and sales folks handle all your questions. I think it gets out a better end product.
Well, the part you mentioned about just doing tuning, that's another thing. Is it's almost as if tuning, as it's grown in popularity, it's almost an add-on service. Like, hey, you can come in and do this, and I can tune. And it reminds me of going to a restaurant where some of them you go to and there's 200 things on the menu.
Right.
And they're all okay. None of them are bad. None of them are great. Then you go to this other place where they have 3 dishes. And they have perfected those 3 dishes to where, you know what you're going to get. And that's what they focus on. It's what they put. Energy has to go somewhere.
Oh,
right?
yeah, Shaq. We're from Louisiana. We know all about the restaurant food. You're not gonna fool me with that jambalaya. What you doing? I come up to Idaho and you guys try to serve us jambalaya, man. What the hell y'all doing? Y'all don't know about no jambalaya. You better stick to what you're good at. I know exactly what you're saying.
Well, I've had a question that I've wanted to ask you for a while because we follow you guys on social media, and that's a 3-liter Powerstroke.
Oh, yeah.
But man, just hit us with what you got going on with the F-150 3-liter Powerstroke.
3-liter Powerstroke. So, I know it's not really going to be until obviously warranties start running up. It's not going to be such a big hit, I don't think, right off the get-go. But I don't know. I like the little truck. So a friend of mine, actually a local here, Ronnie Fontenot's Diesel Performance, ended up getting I think it was like the first one that came into Lake Charles. I think we had ours a few weeks before I seen hardly anybody getting them. And I said, man, give me that truck here. Give me that truck here. I just want to play with it. And it was one of those things I didn't think it was really going to take me long. And I didn't have any special, sometimes whenever we're developing software, we can get special files that's got a bunch of hints and tricks to where things are. And I was like, I'm a bare knuckles this one. I'm just going to basically hex straight through it. And I did, but it took me a lot longer than it should have because I was being hard-headed. I just bare knuckles through it in hex instead of, using traditional tuning softwares. But it was a good experience. But with doing it that way, man, I know this truck up and down. There's really hardly nothing about that ECU anybody could tell me that I wouldn't know about. I worked on it probably, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks straight, and I was putting about 16 hours in a day on it. And the truck came out awesome. We were able to make, around 70 horse over stock, and I think it was like almost 140 foot-pounds. That the turbo on it is the choke point. The regulator, even with a stock curve in the regulator, it still wasn't even hustling. The fuels, it's got, man, I'd put money on it. That thing's probably got 450 horsepower worth of fuel on board, more than likely. It's got some fuel, plenty of injectors. I was barely leaning on the injectors, but I just had a turbo. And another thing that stood out on it, and we actually, and this is cool stuff. I'm kind of going to chase a rabbit trail for a second, but it ties back into things we know now that I wouldn't have known, say even 6 years ago, like bringing air to fuel ratio into tuning. Whenever I started developing the tunes for this truck, I had the wideband on it the whole entire time. So I'm actually monitoring air to fuel ratios, and I'm looking at intake air temps. We really took our time on this thing to find out at what point is this vehicle efficient, is it not efficient? And I try to do all of that here in-house, which will bring us into another conversation, a whole nother rabbit trail of EPA testing. Because if I can get most of that stuff dialed in here at my office, by the time I go and I do, or federal testing, it's really a breeze. But it ties back into what I was saying earlier. These are things that I would have been unable to do without the finances starting up, years ago. And then also the just the experience. Where do you start? Where's air to fuel ratio supposed to be at on a diesel? Where do they start getting rich? Where do they start stopping up the DPFs? Where does soot start increasing? There's so much to it, and without just lots of time and experience, there's no way. It's just another reason. I think PPEI is a really good contender in deciding what tuning to get. We actually ended up doing shift on the fly tuning, which I'm a drop a bomb on that here in just a second. Voss actually changing the name from Shift on the Fly to DST, Driver Selectable Tuning. But we were able to take and get it to where it shifts, it changes tunes with a switch. And I also did a transmission file on it, which we don't have released just yet. We actually dropped the 3.0 tuning today, but the trans file's not there yet. But the trans file's so cool. So I went to take off, and I'm a gear junkie. It's not like I sit here in an office just trying to, make money. I like making things go fast. That's what I like to do. I want to do donuts. And if somebody doesn't know that, all they gotta do is follow my socials, and they'll see all we like to do is go fast and burn tires over here. So I get in the truck, and we made all this power on the dyno over stock, and I was like, yeah, this thing's gonna rip. So I take off, and the gear ratio, oh my god, like, first gear's useless. I roll 7 foot and the truck's shifting. But, I can't send out a trans file that people are doing second gear starts all the time. So I actually took the time, and I figured out how I can actually put the truck into sport mode, and it'll automatically shift up to second and go into my race strategy. So you'll have all the nice characteristics and your normal tow haul and all that kind of stuff with it. But then when it's time to race, it'll automatically go to a second gear start and really get down. The little trans, it gets it whenever you're in sport mode. And I would be willing to say the trans file on the Eco Diesel, I got them mixed up. The trans file on the little 3.0 Powerstroke was just as important as the ECU software. It really made a huge difference. We got it locking as soon as it's up in RPM. It's huge.
That is so exciting to see that, because following tuning for a while, or just being into diesels, we know it can take a while sometimes to get the tuning in, and probably what you guys learned on the 6.7 Cummins, the 6.7 Powerstroke, the LML Duramax, all those things go into this truck, where you can look at it, can save time and do it. And I think there's a lot of interest for these half-ton diesels.
There is.
For different things, it's like, well, I don't really need a 3/4 ton. This half ton could do it. I don't want to get an EcoBoost or a Hemi or something like that.
Right.
I want to go with the diesel. And when you had it on the dyno, what power number did it make stock? And then you guys added, 70 horsepower, 140 foot-pounds to it. But what were your impressions stock versus what the tuning's like, or what it's like tuned?
So tuning, it wasn't as bad. In my opinion, the Eco Diesel stock really needed a whole lot of cleaning up. It didn't really, I don't know, it just didn't run good. It kind of rattled and stuff, and it really needed a lot of tuning. Ford did a really good job on this thing from the factory, and we were actually able to carry over pretty much most of the stuff that we had figured out on the 1718 Ford Super Duties from the ECU side. We were actually able to bring them over to this platform, which, to kind of throw a little funny in there, I flashed the truck on day one of having it by fooling the truck into thinking that it was actually a Super Duty. So when I flashed it, the truck was actually like, "Hey, I'm a Super Duty," and then after I got done flashing it, I had to make it think it was F-150. So people's like, "How in the world did you get it to flash so fast? There's no support." I'm like, it's just magic, But yeah, I was able to take and actually fool the truck into thinking it was a Super Duty. It was kind of funny, but that's how we got on it so fast. But yeah, so I was able to take a lot of that and apply it to this. I'm going off the top of my head, and I could be wrong here, but I think it was somewhere around the 225-ish mark, bone stock. And that trans behind it's freaking awesome. It didn't have a whole lot of drivetrain loss. What they advertise on those trucks stock, is it like 245 or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. So it'd be about right for the drivetrain loss. And something else that's pretty cool, and I'm sure Gail Banks will hear this and absolutely school me. Don't do it, Gail. Don't do it, Gail. We're at your mercy. No, but what I noticed was really neat was, and they use it a lot in gas tuning. If a airflow sensor is calibrated properly, pounds per minute, then technically what you're seeing pounds per minute coming through the airflow sensor is, hit or miss roughly what you're going to see at the crank. And that's roughly almost an exact 15% drivetrain loss on this truck from what we've seen coming through the mass airflow sensor, pounds per minute, to what we ended up seeing at the rear wheel tires on the dyno. So that's kind of a nice little rule of thumb, too, that people can look at. If your mass airflow sensor is calibrated properly, you can kind of make a judgment call towards horsepower from that, too. But it was that was pretty cool. That was something I analyzed as well on the 3.0. Kind of put that theory to work on this one, and it proved true. It was pretty sweet. I think we're flowing like I think it was 31 pounds a minute or something like that on it, and stock was 24 something. So that's something pretty cool to see. And actually going up in boost enough, it would start to decrease and IATs go high, and pretty well one of the new ways that we're taking and trying to be efficient on developing these tunes for new platforms. The way we do it now versus the way we did it even 4 years ago is just night and day difference.
The last time we had you on, you were telling us about the Nissan Titan 5-liter Cummins and tuning it and improvements. How would you compare the two trucks tuned?
Okay, so to be honest, you can't compare them. You can't compare them. The Titan's in a world of its own. I daily drive it. I love my Titan. We have quite a few trucks here that PPEI owns and has for testing. My personal vehicle is a 18 F350. That's what I tow my camper and everything to the races with, and big trailers. But my daily, what I drive every day, because I like the turning and being able to actually get in and out of parking lots and things like that with the half ton, the Titan's on another level, man. But at the same time, you're not going to get all the fuel economy gains that you're getting off of the 3 liters. But the Titan's in a whole different world of its own as far as a comparison of power and torque output and towing capabilities. Man, I've seen some debates online, but I really use the absolute hell out of my trucks and test the crap out of them on the dyno. I think I had over, I want to say with that little 5.0, the little 3-liter Powerstroke, we had like over 300 dyno pulls or something. I would sit and just sustain horsepower for literally a minute at a time. If it blows, it blows. But that's how we test things. And we did the same thing with the Titan, and there's absolutely zero comparison. The Titan's just a man, but it's a 5-liter versus a 3-liter. It's a man. So it's not really that good of a comparison. If somebody's going after fuel economy, they just tow like a little small boat or something like that, or just whatever the towing capacity says, then the 3 liters would be fine. You want a half ton, but you want a little bit more grunt. 3 liters is going to be fine. But if you've got something that's really kind of, I need a 3/4 ton, but I don't really would use it all the time, go with the Titan, because the Titan can do it. It can do a lot of the things that 3/4 tons can do. We pretty well use our Titan to do 3/4 ton things all the time. And braking's no issue. It's got a really nice trailer brake controller. And then I've never turned mine down either. My Titan's 140 horsepower over stock and 800 foot-pounds, and I'm still on stock trans and everything. And we tow with it. I'll put it to the floor, and I let it eat. If something's gonna blow up, I want it to blow up with me driving it, so that way I'll have the data. We're constantly data logging, so if something does break, with EasyLink, where I can constantly data log, I can find out hopefully what caused it and then make recommendations to the customers. But so far, somehow my Titan is still kicking and rolling. I just got I think it's a 364 or a 362 turbos, a setup from Ryan Espo. So I'm hoping that maybe I can find its breaking point with that. Maybe we'll find the breaking point with that on video, or go or blow. We'll find out. We'll do something fun.
Live stream.
I say 600 or bust. 600 or bust.
We had posted up on Instagram some questions. We said, hey, Kory Willis from PPEI is going to be on.
Yeah.
What kind of questions should we ask him? And I wanted to just rattle some off to you that we got from some listeners out there.
Yeah, let's do it.
Now, this first one you touched on like 2.5 years ago, but we've got a lot of new listeners since then. But this person asked, how did Kory get started in the business?
How did I get started in the business? Man, I guess I can give a little rundown on myself. Yeah, God, this podcast has grown so much. People probably have no clue. So I started in this as, I wouldn't say I've never been the smartest person, but I've always had a super, super strong work ethic ever since I was, young. I'm very, very blessed coming from a family with a business background. They never gave us anything where they could have taken, and when all my friends were getting brand new nice four-wheelers, they would get me a older one that ran good, and they're like, yep, if you want something nicer, you need to work for it. This is this is what you get. And they could have afforded to do otherwise. But I think having that really, really good family, good business oriented, very, very good raising, it really gave me an advantage in the business world. I can't really take credit for it all because, like I said, I'm not the smartest person, but I've grown up in business, so I've understood how that works. I've fortunately understood how exchange to advanced finances and credibility with people works. So with that said, my family, they had a few businesses, but the one that I was most involved in, and I actually still have to this day, is a rental company. So we would rent, that now it's different than what it was then, as I primarily do storage units and things like that. But at the time, we had tractors and fun jumps and rock climbing walls, and to make that long story kind of short, I had to basically build a business of the inflatable units, like the fun jumps, the big dogs and dinosaurs, all that craziness, which are hell. Hey, if you see a fun jump worker, tip that guy, give him a beer, give him some Red Bull, give him something. His job sucks. That is a bad freaking job. I'd rather weed eating rocks. But anyways, we started with one jump. By the time I was about 17, 18 years old, I had actually worked my little business up to where I had a lot of units. I had, I don't remember off top hand, but 20 plus units. I had the biggest rock climbing wall. It was portable in Louisiana, and we had gotten to the point where it was nearly commercial. So, I was 18, a senior, and I didn't like school, man, because every time I was in school, I couldn't work, and 18 years old, I was making some really, really good money for my age. I had a pretty nice truck, and it was like, I hate going to school because I'm going to school, in the long run to be able to make a living. And so, and I had issues with teachers. I've always had a problem with authority. I just, I don't have the best resume in the world when it comes to all that. And so, my senior year, I was like, I'm sick of wasting time in school. So I dropped out my senior year, and I went straight from there. I think it was like 2 or 3 days. I went and got my GED. It took me, I think, a week and a half or 2 weeks, and I got a GED. And my parents had talked me into, Kory, you still need to go to college. You still need to go to college. I said, all right. So I actually enrolled into LSUE, and somehow they accepted me. And I started that semester. So I kind of used a play on words as I dropped out of high school, but I actually had started college while my friends were still in high school with a GED. So it's kind of a play on words there. But I lasted about, and like I said, my little rental business was doing really, really well, So I was going to LSUE to do, business marketing. And then I was also kind of looking into going into the plants, and I was like, these are all $60,000 to $80,000 a year jobs, which is great. That's excellent money, but I was making that. So the whole time that I was in there, it was like, man, I don't want to. I really don't want to be here. I want to take and just run my rental company. And with all of that said, making pretty good money at the young age, I had diesel trucks, and we used these diesel trucks to haul my equipment around. And I've always liked going fast. I had my first gasoline powered fuller, I think at 3 years old. So, and was riding it. So I've always enjoyed going fast. So naturally, I think at the time I actually had an Edge stacked with like Hypertech or something like that, whatever. And then some big PPE stuff, and I was tearing things up, being a stupid young kid. And someone had told me about this EFI Live stuff, and I think this is, I don't know, 07 maybe, something like that, 07, 08, who knows. And I think it was LLY. My years could be off, but it's sometime around that time frame. And so I got it tuned, but long story short, I had a couple little issues with the tuning here and there. And I ended up saying, you know what? Like, what is EFI Live? So I was really good at Google. I'm still good at Google. So I took and started Googling, and I seen that was something I could buy. So I took and I bought the software, and I didn't know how to get started. I didn't really know much about it, and I knew a decent bit about engines, a little bit on turbocharging, but I really didn't. I didn't know a whole lot. So I just really Googled a lot of, and this is really to where it gets to answering the question of how did I get started. To me, it was, I try to break everything down in my head as simple as possible. So I broke it down to, okay, this is a engine with sensors that tell it basically what to do. And then it's like, okay, these sensors are actually what's controlling the engine, but they're controlled by an ECU. So it's like, how do I know what to put into the ECU? So just with enough Google, and Duramax diesels was hot at the time. Do you remember DuramaxDiesels.com?
Yeah, I do.
Oh yeah, OG days with Cat and Pat, the true OGs right there. Ultimate respect to those cats. I remember downloading one of his files off the internet and like being able to compare differences and changes, and it's like, oh, that's how that works. He had posted up like a tutorial or something, and that was a lot of that going on, just trying to figure out how this thing works. So I bought books. I'd done a lot of Googling on basically just how diesel engines worked. Whenever I want to go faster, what makes the truck go faster? More fuel. I literally started from the bottom, and I did it just with Google and books on diesel engines. So, we went from there to I actually was able to do enough Googling and research to find out what file to put in my truck. Which my truck, one of my main reasons for getting EFI Live was my AC quit working in my LLY right after I got it tuned, and couldn't figure it out. And so I ended up figuring out. I think actually this is really going to get funny. Brad Gintz, who owns EasyLink now, but he owned Calvin's before, and he was the best. I mean, the best tech, I'd say, probably nearly in the world. And so I call him, and it's like, hey, my AC don't work. He said, oh, your operating system's probably wrong in the truck. It's like, okay, whatever that means. So I start Googling, and I find out what operating system's supposed to go on my truck. I put it in there, and voila, AC works. I felt like an expert tuner. I got a stock file in my truck, and the AC works. But at that point in time, that's where I started taking and comparing different files, and if this file off of like a download or whatever off Diesel Place, if this one made 60 horsepower and the next one made 120, I just read EFI Live's user manual and I see how to compare files, and it's like, okay, this one has more injection pulse width, and I get on Google, what's injection pulse width? How does injection pulse width work? Like literally just trying to figure out how this stuff worked. And I think just really being very hungry for information and wanting to know how it worked. And again, this wasn't a business for me. This was straight up just because I liked it. It was, it was like riding a bicycle. I just wanted to know how it worked, and I wanted to play with my truck. And so, just from doing that and literally becoming obsessed with it for probably over a year straight. And I've got a problem with OCD. I get started on something, I just can't quit. And so I just never quit messing with the truck. And then I had a couple of friends of mine that were like, hey, you want to tune mine? I'm like, heck no, I'm not an O-tuner. You can take and, hit up one of the real, hit up Idaho Rob or something. Hey, I don't know what I'm doing. go buy a tune from someone reputable. Like, no, your truck runs good. I want you to tune it. So I would tune it, and then their ACs quit working. No, I'm joking. Sometimes it happens, but not all the time. We know how to fix it. But
the AC delete mod.
Right? So it was all fun. And, it was, I think a VIN license was like $125. I wouldn't even charge my friends for it. I'm like, here, run it and let me know how it does. And then, that turns into the local, my truck's faster than your truck thing. And then we're going to the track. And, this is at the time whenever we didn't know what was wrong and right in tuning. We just freaking would put stuff in there and see what happened. Surprise, we went faster. Surprise, the truck's in limp mode. Surprise, it blew up. So, but I had a pretty good understanding, man, from Google of what to do and what not to do, and then just getting obsessed with it really made it really made it kick off. And I think my obsessiveness with how this whole vehicle tuning thing worked I would post a lot of questions and I would post a lot of answers to like EFI Live's forum, which had landed me on beta. So I basically just an enthusiast that ends up being in these beta parties with these professional tuners and whatnot. And I didn't really consider myself a tuner, a professional tuner. It was just I like doing this for fun. And I just so happened to have a decent bit of knowledge about it just from trial and error. So, that's when EFI had come out with it for like the LBZ LMM or something like that right after. And I immediately bought an LMM and got it to run really well. And, LMMs were kind of the game changers for EFI Live tuners. You actually had a lot of tuners and a lot of enthusiast tuners back in the LB7, LOI, LBZ days. But when the LMM came out, there was so many more tables and so much more logic in it. And for me, it was a challenge, and I wasn't really doing it for money, so it was just for fun. And I got obsessed with it, and I had a LMM truck, and which I spent some money on, and I started. Once I got the LMM tuning running pretty good, a lot of local folks, because not many tuners I think were even offering it. I was in the EFI Live beta, so I had it before a lot of people, and we started tuning a decent bit of trucks locally. And again, I wasn't charging for it, and it finally got to where my phone was ringing so much for tuning that it was starting to affect my, how I made a living with the rental business. So I said, well, I got to start charging. That way, I don't tune as many trucks. So I actually had started charging, and I charged a lot because truthfully, I really didn't want to tune trucks. And people were paying. And before I know it, we're tuning, or I say it was just me, one man showing at the time, juggling my rental company and the tuning thing. We're tuning 7-10 plus trucks a week, and it's taking up all my time. But the money I was starting to make from it was, starting to outweigh my rental money. So I started coming to a real, I hope I'm not taking too much time up on this aspect, but I think it's a decent little story. It started taking up a lot of time, and it was like, I need to make a decision. I either have to quit tuning trucks or limit the amount I can tune, or this thing that I love and I'm truly passionate about, like I enjoy it. I can do this every day of my life. With the rental business, I liked it. I grew up in it. I knew it. But at the end of the day, I did it because I needed to make money. I didn't love it. It wasn't a hobby for me. It was what I knew. It was what I was making money with. So, I ended up deciding, what do I have? What I got to lose? I guess I was 20 or something. It's like, I'm gonna just take a chance. Screw it. And so I let go of the rental business, sold off most everything, if looking back now and knowing things I do in business, I should have actually sold the business and put some money in my pocket. It was a good business, but all I cared about really was just tuning trucks. So, I invested. Once I did that, I had, the time and I was making okay money with it. I took a pay cut, but it was worth it. And so, and the biggest thing was I think it goes into taking chances, like who knows where that tuning thing was going to go. I know still to this day, I could have had a hugely successful rental company. And that's all I really knew. Like I knew that business, but I decided to take a chance on what I loved doing and took a pay cut. And, what that led to was becoming really good. At that point, I could start considering myself a professional because, you're a professional if you charge for a service. So once I made that my job, I wanted to be as good as I possibly could at it. And what changed the game for us, there was two big game changers in PPEI. The first big game changer being Eric Stelly. I don't get to see him as much as I want to, but anybody, OG and NHRDA, ODSS is the big thing now, but back then, all we really had was NHRDA. You remember those days, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, it was NHRDA and Eric Stelly. Do you remember Eric?
I do.
Here's the coon ass from Louisiana, 11 Grand Chenier, single cab LMM. throw 150 pounds of boost at it, blow up 10 times. We good. Yeah. So the turning point for us, and I still feel to this day, like I owe Eric a lot of credibility. Was he took that race truck and basically dropped it off, and we're talking, shit, I'm gonna get my times wrong, but I'm gonna assume. Let's assume sometime around 2011, maybe 2010, 2011. And he's got a freaking built motor, low compression LMM with 250% over injectors in it, 12 mil pumps, and 106 millimeter charger over a 75. That was big back in the day.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was huge.
That's a lot of air and fuel.
Now. Yeah, now they're like, oh, that's almost a street truck. Okay, back then, that was a big boy. And we ran 152 mile an hour in that truck, too. It made huge power. But Eric dropped it off. He said, hey, you're tuning this. And I was like, yeah, man, I think, I'm not comfortable with this. I've never tuned anything of this caliber. He said, well, good. You can learn on this truck and start today. I want to have, basically it goes back to that local tuner thing. I want to have a guy at my disposal and go to the track with me and this and that. Say, cool, I'm your guy. So that was the first big boy truck I ever tuned. And, I started getting on the phone with like Rob and people that's been doing it longer than me. And it's like, hey, where's this thing go? I think Rob was originally the one that had tuned the truck. And Rob and I would share a lot of information back and forth. We're still really good friends to this day. Rob was legit. And, so being able to talk to a lot of people, I was never scared to pick up the phone and ask questions. And I was able to get the truck running really good, get the truck running really, really, really strong. We got it spooling nice. And whenever we broke the LMM record, which I think is still the freaking record till this day, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think anybody's broke it yet, all the way from 2012 or whatever. But when we did that, that's when the forums started blowing up. And it's like, hey, who's this Cory guy? And I was on there and it was just fun for me. That was at the beginning of the business. And that goes back to what I was saying before, where you can be really personable and you're trying to learn. And so I talked to everybody on the forums and it blew up. So that's what really got PPEI going. To where it started hitting next levels, that's whole different stories. But how did PPEI get started? Where did I come from? That's A to Z until we start talking about LMLs.
It leads into the next question, which is kind of funny. This guy spells Cory the same way you do. And he said, hi, right? Cory, do you ever sleep? And
So... on sleep, fortunately this won't be as long of a story as what I just told. On sleep, this is funny. So back whenever I was doing a lot of that, a lot of learning, so to speak. Like I said, I get obsessed with something and I can't stop. It's literally like a junkie. I wasn't sleeping really at all back then. I just couldn't help but want to learn and want to study. So I was probably working at the time 16, 18 hours a day. And I did that, up until I'd say 2015-ish, maybe. I worked about that much. And then, 15, things kind of slowed down a little bit. The business didn't slow down, but development kind of had slowed down. The Cummins platforms didn't change. The Duramax platforms were pretty much all the same. It was kind of like a little resting period. So I got to where I was working, 10, 12 hours a day. And I've been pretty much on that for a good little while. But do I sleep? No, I really don't sleep, but I love what I do so much that I don't feel like I'm coming to work. So when I leave, I'm normally studying ECUs, or, I'm studying diesels, or I'm studying software. That's what I do. It started off as a hobby, and it feels like a hobby to me. I still really, really, really like and enjoy this industry and enjoy the software. So learning is fun to me. So I pretty much, quote unquote, work from the time I wake up, from the time I go to sleep. I don't watch TV really at all. My wife will watch TV while I sit and I'll study about how CAN bus systems work. So, but before I was married, no, I never ever slept. It was basically just get it. Once I got married, I slowed down to be able to give her some time. But I'll still get in my spells, kind of like the last 3 months leading up to all these huge updates we've been doing. She basically would tell you she hasn't seen me. I've been working. I get up normally 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I come into the office and try to get everything rolling. And I'll normally leave here, 11 o'clock at night. But being that we got most of these updates out this week, I'm hoping I can get back on my like 7 to 5 schedule. We'll see if that happens. But do I sleep? No, not much. I'm always doing something to do with tuning or software, vehicles. I got a new book called The Core Hacker's Handbook, and it's amazing. So I'm obsessed with that right now. But no, I don't.
That was actually the next question we got, is what updates have you guys released this week or recently?
Oh, so this is kind of a combination of EFI Live and EasyLink. EFI Live did their new update. That is freaking awesome. The big party symbols, rock out Ross at EFI Live. You're the freaking man, Ross and Paul. They've got the Cummins now working to where you don't have to do like the separate cables or use third-party devices for unlocking. You can just use the EFI platform right through the OBD port. So we moved all of our software, I think Monday, but we officially announced it today, to that software. So that's not so much our update, but that is a big update in general that we've announced. That's EFI Live's deal, but it's big. EasyLink flashing support for LBZ LMM Duramax. I got all the single tune profiles all done. They are ready to go, and I think we'll be hitting the cloud more than likely this evening or Monday. I've got a DST solution figured out for it. I just need to dial it in. It works. I just got to dial it in. So hopefully by the end of next week I'll have that. I finished up EcoDiesel DST tuning, which formerly known as Shift on the Fly. So when I say DST, it's Shift on the Fly. But we got the EcoDiesel stuff all done, which is cool. I'm not charging any extra for it. Customers got to buy the switch. The only thing I implemented with it was basically after 30 days, it's a $100 reflash fee. So I think that's pretty fair. And if something's legit or there's a problem, and I'm not going to charge for it. But if you just want to change tunes or updates or something, we got to split the ECUs. We got to do all the work over here. So we're doing a little charge for that. But any new customers, no charge, charging the same. So I think that's kind of cool. I'll save the best for last. The 2018 Cummins, we've got new cable, so they can be done through EFI Live. let's see what else was. Oh, the EGT control thing, which I currently have done right now for the LML. Really, really, really cool. Most people don't care about EGTs, but there are people that do care about EGTs. And I've actually recalibrated and tested across quite a few platforms, including my big homie Tony Rizzi with the nasty Street Outlaws truck. He's also confirmed all the data, and if there's a truck to confirm EGT data on it, that's one of them. But I've got it set up to where I can leave the sensor in stock locations and make it read as though it's coming out the manifold. You know, there's always room for error with that, but I've got it freaking dialed. So it'll actually, if you tell me you don't want your truck to go over 1400 degrees, I'll make it to where the truck sticks at 14, you know, it won't go over 1400 degrees. It'll defuel to that point. Where someone said that's a factory feature. Yeah, it's a factory feature, but the factory isn't, you know, it's not going to defuel you to that point. It's going to be just a linearized curve down. And then it can, the factory sensor, I think off the top of my head, goes up to like 1100 degrees or something. And I've got this one reading, you know, I think all the way up to 1800. And which you'll melt the stock ones, but whatever. You shouldn't be at that high EGTs unless you just like to party. But so I got that. That was I spent some time on that one. That's a pretty cool update. So if you got a customer that doesn't want to go over 1350, I can set the tune file to not go over 1350. And if they've got the stock EGT sensor and stock location, it'll defuel it to that point. You don't want to go over 1600, I'll defuel it to 1600. So that was a pretty cool update, and I'm going to have that applied to all the Ford and all the Cummins profiles here very shortly as well. And I think the 3.0 will release that today. Fuel tank adjustments on EasyLink for the Duramax is all. We announced all that today. But the biggest thing, and this is what took all of our time, was you're gonna like this. break the internet. We can switch tunes through the app for 11 through 16 Fords. So it's a CAN-based solution, and we pre-populate it all within your app whenever you install one of our CAN-based profiles, and you can switch your horsepower levels within the app without having to have a switch plugged into the truck. So that's the game changer that we've been working on, and that's the thing that I'm most excited about, and this is the first time I've talked about it. So that's releasing today. I've got pretty well all our basic profiles already uploaded to the cloud. Lots of trucks beta tested, happy, works. It's basically the same tuning that was there before, but with a couple of little small updates we found, and that CAN-based solution. So it's pretty cool. We got a video we're gonna post up and show, but yeah, you can now on 11 through 16 Ford switch tunes on the fly without having a switch installed with PPEI tuning.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, what else is cool too that's never been done before is I also included in that same profile. Some people will say, well, and the original reason we had gone to the switch was because people's like, well, we don't like using the app. We don't have to rely on our phone or Wi-Fi issues, this and that, whatever. So we went to a solution of the switch. Huge popularity, and I think that has now become the standard. Well, we were the first people to do it, and that's now become the standard for changing tunes is wire switching to the cab. So what I did is on that CAN-based profile, if you want to use a switch in the cab or your pre-existing switch, I actually put a setting in there that all you have to do is there's settings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for your horsepower levels. And then I made a 6th setting that says click here for hardwired switch. When they click on that, it'll automatically default to being able to work with their switch without having to change the tune file. So I think that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool update.
That is totally different than how it's always been.
Yeah, so I think it's a game changer. If you wanna do it through the app, cool, it's right there. Select it. If you want to do it through the switch, cool, select it. And I'm pretty proud of that one.
Man, you guys have been hard at work. Those are a lot of updates to have.
Yeah, and that's just a that's just a few that's worth mentioning. I've actually made a lot of updates to our profiles and tunes. I've 100% redone all of our 13 to 18 Cummins tuning from the ground up. Just like I said, over the years you learn more and more, and software also comes a long ways. Once upon a time, I was having to basically copy from a text document hex strings to try to find just a shift point into a hex editor. Where now we've got really good softwares that we've been financially able to get that I can take and just change it like almost they would OEM. We can even do a lot of calibrating on the fly now in house, so I don't even have to reflash a truck. So being able to really dial stuff in like that, it's just things we couldn't do, resources we didn't have. It's just a whole more reasons to select PPEI as a really good option for tuning. We've hit another level. We just got an awesome team here, man. I'm not trying to brag on it, but the team of people we have here, I just wish everybody could meet them. Everybody here just rocks, man. George on IT, Chad Cole's pretty much the one most everybody knows here, and Chad's one of my really close friends. That he's pretty well most of the face. That's who people meet at the events with the trailer, and I just couldn't. Logan's lead tech here. It's just Shane's doing advanced calibrations. It's just there's so many valuable people here at the office, and I'm learning from them constantly. I go downstairs and they're like, "Oh, I fixed such and such truck, or I fixed such and such issue." I'm like, "How'd you do it?" And they show me, and I'm like, "That worked? Like seriously?" So, where before it was just me, my thought process for tuning here, and now we've got, 3 or 4 calibrators in house that are just legit, and then access to some of the world's best engineers and ECU engineers. It's just, it's almost like it's not fair these days. Me from 5 years ago couldn't have competed with me now. There's no way. There's no way. PPEI from 5 years ago could never have competed with PPEI as to what it is now from a development perspective.
That's what it's all about with business, is looking back and saying, could I have competed with myself then, now? And if you could say no, then you're making improvements.
Yeah. That Cummins update, it's really a universal effort here, between Paul is our pretty well-known Cummins guy over here at the shop, and his feedback from customers, and like I said, we're not perfect. What happens is I get in a truck and I'll go drive it, and it drives good, like the truck we have, and then I'll send the file out to 15, 30 trucks or whatever, and say run this, and then we do the best we can at the revisions to make them as good as possible, and then we release that to the public. But if we're releasing this to the public and we tune 3,000 trucks in one freaking day from an update, we're gonna find out what we're made of.
Yeah.
So with this newest Cummins update, it's been, I'd say, probably about a year in the making, a long ways, and it's as good as I feel it can get. Where our old files, I'm just going to use numbers as examples, would have had say 1,400 changes within the ECM TCM file to get things done. My new ones, I would say, if the old one was 1,500, the new one's 150 different changes. We've literally got it narrowed down that good. So the less changes you have in a file, the more consistent it is truck to truck. And I think this new Cummins update is the end all. I think it's where it's at for PPEI on Cummins. I think it's awesome.
I got one last question for you. I know you're a busy guy. And
we're good. We're good. I'm enjoying this.
This is like the lightning rod. This is what everyone wants to know.
Yeah, let's do it. I know where it's at.
It's coming. Where's L5P
Hashtag,
stuff?
I knew it was there. So L5P, people's like, why aren't you working on it? Man, we've invested so much money. We've invested so much time in it. And, they're like, well, why don't you just get to know someone from OEM or this and that? Okay, well, let's pretend we know someone from OEM. Let's pretend the guy from OEM hooks us up. Let's pretend we've got everything at our disposal. Now we have an IP issue. We can't take and send out stuff from OEM if we have to, even if we wanted to. You can't do that. So it legitimately has to be reversed. It has to be reverse engineered. Is the ECU locked? Yes. Is the LML ECU locked? Yes. Is the Cummins ECU locked? Yes. And no one's necessarily broke these encryptions. You find ways around them. So, where everybody's aspect is you can't break it. It's unbreakable. Don't even look at it. That's not true. You just have to work around that. And there's ways of doing it. It just takes a really, really, really long time. And we're working on it. We are a heck of a lot further on L5P than we were before. But do we have it, to where we can release it? Do we have it to where, we can readily flash trucks? No. But do we know 1,000% more this year than we did last year? Yeah. So to say L5P is dead or it's not going to happen, no, it's going to happen. And I really don't. I don't have the capabilities myself of doing it. That's not my expertise. I'm not a legitimate someone to hack these processors, but there are, and there's legal ways of doing it, and that's what we're working on now. We're working with the best engineers in the world. People that's done legitimate first in ECU development and reverse engineering, and it goes back to we're financially capable of doing those things now, where before we were not. So we are advancing on L5P. It is making headway. I'm 100% confident L5P is going to come to market, and it's going to come with a full tuning platform, a full racing platform. And the day that it happens, we're gonna go out there with a stock single cab and find out what it's made of. As soon as we have something available to release. But yeah, are we there now? Do I know an ETA? No, I don't. But working with some of the best people in the world, I'm hoping that we can get there.
And then the phones are going to ring off the hook when you release it that now.
Yeah, the good news is that there's really GM hasn't done. They've done a few updates for it, but the operating systems, because they're like, well, can you why don't you tune it? I have the tuning done for them. Like the day that I can take and legitimately get this thing to flash happily, tuning will be supported. I had this thing mapped out since 2016, but until we have a good flashing method, it's just sitting there. So, but being able to see all the updates that GM's made, and and the new OSs and new changes, new calibrations, they're not much different. So, I think regardless of as soon as we're able to flash this thing, we'll have tuning out the door. We'll be ready to go.
Man, it's exciting. And this has been a really fun podcast, just to recap so much and talk about. I think we've touched on every platform of truck that's a diesel truck that's out there, but it's what people wanted to know. They love hearing from you.
It is, man. It is, and I think something else. I know we're taking up a bit of time here, but something else I touch on too is social media, and I can't interact like I used to on social media, and be as personable as I want to, because it blows up. If I take and I've got, it's not like I get on Facebook or Instagram and I see 10 comments. If that was the case, I'd go reply to 10 comments, no problem. It's every hour when I log in, I've got 200, 300 plus notifications. So it's whichever one I see that's basically at the top of the list, I'll click on and I'll go talk to them. But I really wish I could get to know everybody better than we do. I wish that I could be more personable. So that's where going to events and I was really trying hard to be at Alligators this weekend, but getting these updates out were at most important. But I'm hoping I can go out to more events, and I'll be in the PPEI trailer, and I wish everybody would come talk to us, get to know us. We're real people. We're not just people sitting behind a computer screen, and I'm not just some CEO. I truthfully love and enjoy this industry, and I like people. So I think I think it'd be cool to be able to meet more folks, and I'm glad that this podcast allows people to at least be able to hear a little bit of personality rather than just business and updates, through social media. So what you're doing, man, I really, really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, that's what we love doing, is being able to say, hey, let's sit down with Kory for an hour plus. Let's ask him questions. Let's talk about his business and the product, and have people get to know you and know your business and the team that you have and the things that you're working on. And, because it is impossible. I mean, it's either L5P tuning and updates, or you're on Facebook. And I think everybody wants you on that stuff.
Hard.
So
it's hard, man. It's hard to balance. But another thing coming through, a couple of things I'll just say that's coming to the pipe really, really shortly here is all the power sports stuff. I won't necessarily say I race professionally on power sports, but we freaking run them through the ringer. I think I've got the most knowledgeable person, one of the most knowledgeable people in the world on power sports stuff in-house here, Shane Dowden. He's got a track record through the sky. So when we release our power sports tuning, it's going to be on another level. And we'll be doing that through EasyLink. Big rigs and agriculture, Volkswagens, Sprinter vans of all types. We're going to be releasing all that very shortly here. It's all pretty well ready to go and done. So this is just one update of many to come. And the reason this is all happening now is because we finally got PPEI dialed in. Our team, our processes are finally working, which allows me to get back to doing what I love, which is straight up R&D and developing tuning and making things better. So there's going to be a lot more coming from PPEI. We're just getting started.
Kory, I appreciate your time today, man, and dropping some knowledge on us, answering some questions from our listeners, and I can't wait to see the next set of updates you guys release.
Yeah, man, we'll be in contact soon. I surely appreciate it, sir.
Don't forget, diesel fans, make sure and head on over to diesel911.com if you're looking for an engine for your diesel truck. No matter the year, what make you got, the guys over there do a stellar job with engine builds and getting you a product that you can count on, whether it's for work, racing, anything in between. And also PPEI. Just click the link in the description. Anything we've talked about on this podcast, you can find right there. Any questions you got, they'll be answered. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.